am sick of seeing Black Americans in the media, on social media, in the news, doing crime, walking around next to naked, the women, the men perpetuating gang violence, substance abuse. The absolute worst of our community is oversaturating the media, even though they make up a small percentage of all of Black Americans. The decay of our morality within Black communities has been slowly declining over the past 20 years, and no one is talking about it, no one is saying anything about it or trying to address it. And if you do, you are often told that you're policing Black bodies. If you say Black women, stop getting on the internet and in the media, twerking, walking around with little clothes on. People tell you that you're policing bodies, policing Black bodies, or it's respectability politics. If you are Black and you speak your piece on what we're seeing in the media, if you don't like seeing the low morality that is often portrayed about the Black community in the media, from the trap music to the Black women twerking in music videos and all over social media, the Sukihanas and the Sexy Reds of the world. If you are Black and you take issue with it and you talk about it, you are usually called bourgeois, sedity, uppity, it's respectability politics, you're policing Black bodies and the like. And it's like, no, I'm Black too. And as such, this being my ethnic culture as well, I have a right to have something to say about what I'm seeing going on. Your average Black American is a middle class, working class, blue collar Jane and Joe. The ghetto subculture, Black ghetto subculture that we see often portrayed and over inundated and oversaturating the media, those Black Americans make up a tiny, tiny percentage of Black Americans as a whole, but somehow they're in the media, overcompensating in the media, oversaturating the media.
So welcome back to the channel. And unless you've been living under a rock, there's a big move right now about talking about ghetto culture, ratchet culture, Black people and the culture dying, and basically who's killing it, right? So you may or may not have seen this particular video, but a couple of other influencers have actually already started to talk about it. And I'm glad I kind of jumped on this bandwagon a little bit earlier, because I had a video that actually did pretty well for me, and it was basically talking about the same thing. But I think this particular lady's video has actually gone and done a little bit more. So again, let's break it down, because that's what I do on this channel. So again, we have to remember we're dealing with narratives. And people really, I don't know if people quite understand this. So let me give you another way to look at it. About, 15 years ago or so, you all saw the movie Transformers, and it was a live action version of the original 80s cartoon. Now, for me, I grew up with that cartoon. I remember that cartoon very well. And I even have, I think, maybe 1 or 2 Transformer toys in a box somewhere. All right. So that was, my world. I understood that. But when they made the movie, all right, they were trying to figure out, okay, how do we update these cars? Because if you know anything about the movie, the Transformers is basically cars that turn into robots. And the robots are sentient and they have their own personalities, blah, blah, blah. So what's going on is you have these people in Hollywood and they're sitting around a table and they're trying to figure out, okay, how do we upgrade these cars? So evidently they're like, okay, we want to maybe do some sports cars. We want to do some cool cars. This is how we're going to do it. We need a brand new 18-wheeler type of truck. We need something that's cool. And as they were thinking about this, they were like, okay, is there any way that we can do what's called product placement? And many of you might not really truly understand that term, but that term has actually been around, for years. Absolute years. It goes all the way back to black and white movies. Because what advertisers understood is when people watch movies or when they watch TV, they become very interested in the things that they see. And they want to experience those things, and or they're curious about those things, and or they want those things. So like even, in the movie The Transformers, what you have going on is you actually had a company, that stood up, General Motors, and they said, hey, we will pay you $40 million. I think that was the amount. I might be off a little bit, but it was in the millions of dollars for you to make the Transformers, the new Transformers that are coming out. We want you to make them in the style of our cars. All right. So while they couldn't do the main guy who's Optimus Prime, they could do most of the other Transformers. And so even now there's a Camaro that basically is supposed to be Bumblebee, when in the 80s cartoon, he was actually a Volkswagen Bug. But Volkswagen, they weren't really concerned about their Volkswagen money. They wanted that General Motors money, right? So they changed the car, from a Volkswagen to a Camaro. You kind of see where I'm going with this. Everything about that movie was all about we're selling cars. See, you might have thought, oh, I'm watching this movie, I'm getting entertained by all the explosions and different things like that. And maybe if you're an old head like me, you're looking at it for some kind of plot line that reminds you of the 80s cartoon. But that's not really what they were doing. What they were doing was selling cars. When you really start to look at media really prefers certain types of things based upon the people behind the narrative. If you look at the original Roseanne sitcom, they actually had issues getting it on the market. And the reason why that particular sitcom a long time ago, they've redone it now with the Connors, but the original version, it actually took a lot for it to get onto television. Why? Because the original was really more of a concept of, poor white life. And a lot of white people really didn't want that. They did not want that in the media. Why? Because it represents them. And they knew it was going to go overseas and other people were going to see it. So you might be like, Jay, okay, what does this have to do with Black culture? What does this have to do with all the ratchet stuff that we're seeing? It lines up exactly with that. Because what a lot of people want is they like the subculture in America. They like that because they think it's fun. They think it's funny. But they don't want to see white people doing it. They don't want to see certain cultures doing it. So they look and they try to find, okay, who's willing to do this? Who's willing to sell out for money? And so now they find a whole lot of people within the Black culture that are saying, I'll do anything for $1. Come on now, give me that dollar. I'll damn for that dollar. Come on, y'all, let me damn for this dollar. And unfortunately, it's something that has now resurfaced. Because like I've told you guys, in the 80s, a lot of African Americans in the middle class were trying to get rid of it. They were trying to push it down. They were trying to, kind of put a lid on it like a lot of other cultures did. And the reason why they were doing this was because they recognized that media does not stop at the American border. It actually goes overseas. And so now people in other countries are watching you. And when they see you and they see these movies, they identify with the characters of the movie and they believe that all the people who look like this act like this. And that's why in the 80s, there was such a move to try to do positive Black people. But the problem is, and this is not against her argument, I 100% agree with her argument, but the problem that they had with this is that a lot of Black people don't identify with the middle class struggle. And for some reason, they don't really desire it. And I think that's really where the issue is. They're not desiring it. They don't understand that a lot of the choices that they make hurt them from really getting the lifestyle that they want. So then, like I said, you look at the 80s and you have, all these wholesome movies. You got Spike Lee putting out movies. You got Robert Townsend putting out movies. You have, Cosby show on the television. But then you go into the 90s And that's when you start to see more single black women in these things. You have things like Girlfriends, Living Single. And then in the movies, you had a lot of gangster type of, dramas where a lot of black men were struggling. They were shooting, menace to society, boys in the hood. Okay. And there was more on top of that. And then as you start to come into the 2000s, you had Tyler Perry showing up. And while I'm not 100% against Tyler Perry, because I know he tries to show, black people at different economic levels, he still has allowed for so many of his films to basically make the woman where everything's going right for her, but then the men, they don't quite have it together. And so he leans into that narrative because that is the people that basically are watching his films. So what has happened is there was a conscious effort to push a certain narrative in the 80s, but that's been lost because there's more money in drama. And if you've watched my channel a lot, I talk about that all the time. There is money in drama. Even out on YouTube, I challenge you for a second to think about the last 5 videos that you've watched on YouTube. Are they positive and uplifting? Or are they dramatic? Or are they a mixture of both? Which ones make you laugh more? Which ones, stir up more emotion in you? So this is how all this works. And when you start talking about YouTube or Instagram or TikTok or whoever, they're just all about money. They're about the algorithm. So at the end of the day, if I put out stuff that's more dramatic and I start talking about, these people over here are bad or these people over here are bad, and I put, pictures up with people crying and all this other kind of stuff, are they yelling? Are they doing their little dance or they twerking and all this other kind of stuff? Guess what happens? I get more views. And I get, more people that are paying attention to my media. Even though my media, if I was doing all that, could be toxic, there's still people that will pay attention to it. Why? Because they're addicted to the drama. And even though, to her point, most black people don't act like this, the thing about it is not only do they relate to it, but there's a part of them that thinks it's funny. There's a part of them that wants to see it. There's a part of them that is still like, I gotta get this. Because, my cousin, not my cousin, but, my other cousin, my double cousin, they kind of like this. They kind of ratchet like this. And so it builds that familiarity. And let's be real. I don't know too many black people that don't have one cousin in a family, that like this. All right. Some of us got a couple. But the point of it is we have to think about all of these things. And like I said, I'm not against her. I've already done 2 videos talking about hood ratchet culture and how I think as black people, we need to get beyond it. So don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I'm trying to give the reasons why this happens. And I'm trying to let you guys know that this is all economic. This is all about money. And it might not be direct money, but it is direct money. Because again, how many people have built platforms off of drama? They built platforms off of pitting black women against black men. They built platforms about division and destruction instead about coming together.
I know I don't just speak for myself when I say that I'm sick of seeing it, that it's gross, that it is destroying what black culture actually is. It's co-opting black culture as a whole and making it seem as though all of black culture is ghetto subculture. I'm not the only black American who takes issue with it. Because like I said, majority of black America is middle class, not in the ghettos, not out here perpetuating gang violence, promiscuity, and everything else. And I don't care if you claim it's respectability politics. I guess so be it. Because this is gross. It's getting really gross out here how blatantly disrespectful and low class we're acting on social media and in the media, on the internet, on TV. And you can claim that this is someone else's set of moral standards, but no, it isn't. It isn't. Look at Black America in the 50s, in the 60s. Our moral standards back then, drastically different from what we have today.
So again, I don't disagree with anything that she is saying, but I also want to make sure that, we recognize from a historical perspective, a lot of the things that have happened. All right. Because there's so much. I mean, like I say, there could be video upon video and an hour upon hour, which I know you guys don't want to watch, talking about that. Everything from, how men could just be walking to work because it was rare for a black person, depending upon the time period, to have a car. We didn't always have cars. Cars was a rich person's thing or a person's thing that, had just a little bit more money. So you had a lot of black people riding the bus and walking. And you could just be a black man walking back from work and the cops would pick you up, pull you over and take you to jail, and you didn't do anything. And there's a whole history about the chain gangs in the South and how the chain gangs were kind of like the new slavery of their time because they could use prisoners to actually do work. And as they're creating these chain gangs, what are they doing? They're taking the man out of the home. So now, again, kids are being raised without dads. And this creates this whole, cycle, of generational moms, single moms. And this is one of the main reasons why I push marriage as much as I do, because I recognize that it's so important for black men and black women to get married, even if you don't marry each other, even if you marry people from overseas, even if you marry people from other races, it's so important to the core foundations of strength. When you look at economics, when you look at child safety, when you look at the future of a bloodline, marriage is huge. It is huge. And that's why I never want us, to look down upon it. So that's why I say I'm agreeing with her, but I want to make sure that we really kind of pull out all the pieces. And then those, like I said, that are in that situation where they're pushing all this stuff on social media and stuff like that, you got to remember what they're getting out of it. And so for them, what they're getting out of it is a paycheck. What they're getting out of it is the concept of a better life.
Or what we're convincing ourselves is a moral standard today. Every racial group on the face of the planet has their own ghetto subculture within their respective racial and ethnic groups. This is the case for everybody, everywhere. White people, Asian people, Mexican people, you name it. The difference is that those racial groups and those ethnic groups do not allow their ghetto subculture to co-opt the entire culture as a whole and to represent the entire culture as a whole. They don't allow it.
I 100% agree with that. And that's kind of what I was saying earlier about Roseanne, and the fight that they had to do to get Roseanne on the air, because at that particular moment in time, a lot of white people did not want their subculture seen, like that. One of the differences between African American culture and a lot of the cultures that she's talking about throughout the world, the way that their power structure is built is totally different. See, ours is built off of scraping to get to the top, where theirs is built more in an organic way over time. And I don't think, again, people quite understand this. Like when the Koreans, like if you don't know anything about Atlanta and you're not from Atlanta, okay, I'm about to give you a little bit of information. So in Gwinnett County, okay, which is one of the 12 counties that makes up the greater Atlanta area, what we call the greater Atlanta area, there is a huge amount of Koreans. In fact, I'm not sure how true this is, but it is said that there is more South Koreans in Gwinnett County than any other county in the United States. All right, so it is that many up there. And if you go into their areas, you see very quickly that these aren't just the rich Koreans. These are the rich ones. They're the poor ones. They're the ones that are struggling. You have Korean banks. You have Korean stores. So their whole community looks almost like a white community, except it's Korean. Okay, I'm hoping you kind of get this. But if you go into the black community, what you see is you don't see the same thing. You see other people, generally white people and actually Asian people, that are coming in to the black community and actually supplying black people with whatever it is they need, from banks to hair all the way to groceries and even gas. We don't see Black people really in control of our own communities.
Everybody else within that respective ethnic group or cultural group or racial group has a right to say how they want to see themselves represented in the media, what they want to see and what they don't want to see, who gets to speak for them and who does not. Except for when you're a Black American and you have something to say about the way that you see Black Americans being portrayed in the media and you have a critique for your peers. You can't do it because it's respectability politics if you attempt to do it. Or you're judging your peers by a set of moral standards that somebody else created, which is a farce. From the Reconstruction era down through the 60s, Black Americans had their own set of moral standards and social protocols that we adhered to. Ask your grannies, ask your great grannies, they'll tell you. I have had just about enough of seeing Black culture being drugged through the muck by other Black Americans who are perverting it and turning Black culture, something that is beautiful, into something perverse. Showing their ass on the internet all the time. The men are constantly rapping and talking about gang violence. Our children are uneducated and stupid. We've created a cultural standard of promiscuity and single motherhood. And when a Black American goes to critique and judge our peers, our fellow Black Americans, and critique the condition of our neighborhoods today, they're shut down. That's just
So again, I agree with all of what she is saying right there. And again, that is actually one of the reasons why this channel exists. Like I said, I've been leaning more towards, Black people over the last year. I've even talked about that. I'm very concerned about every single thing that she's talking about. And one of the things that I feel, from dealing with a singles perspective, because remember, she has her own perspective, so she's saying this from her, vantage point from, being an influencer. And from my vantage point, because I'm more about, like I say, that marriage, that getting away from singleness, that us, as Black men and women coming together. So you have to understand my perspective on what she's saying. And so from my perspective, a lot of that gets solved as we start to remove all of this pain, frustration, and drama between Black men and Black women. When we understand that there are narratives out here that are telling Black women that there's not enough Black men. I've heard that from so many people. And it doesn't matter how much information I put up on the screen, I will run into somebody that will swear it. I mean, they could have watched 5 of my videos. They could have sat and talked to me personally. I can show the United States Census data. And then they still will sit there and tell me, oh man, there's like 5 women for every man. And that could not be further from the truth. Depending upon, like I say, who you're listening to, and I've even heard Black women that have actually done their research talk about this, there are approximately 4 single, straight, nothing wrong with them, healthy, got a job, Black men for every 5 Black women of the same characteristics.
So studies have shown that the rate of Black men in the age group of about 25 to 54 in comparison to Black women is actually 83 to 100. So for every 100 Black women, there are only 83 men, right?
So
all right. So it's only about a 20% difference, between the two. And that is me being really nice to the women because it's really closer to like 83 to 100. So that being said, even on that, there's a narrative. And why is that narrative there? Because they have drama. Now you freak out women. And now because women are freaked out, they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do about having a man. So now they got all these talk shows and all these other places where women are, glued to the TV saying, oh my gosh, I need this information and blah, blah, blah. Okay. And all this money is being exchanged. All this money based on lies. And that's what I'm always trying to get you guys to understand. Every single thing somebody is telling you, there's always something that they're trying to push. There is something they're trying to make sure that you get, and it's advertisement. That's why I put mine on the screen. I put it on the screen so you know what my agenda is. So there is no misinterpretation of what I am trying to explain and what I'm trying to go over. Black women, black men, women in general, men in general, we have more in common than we have problems. We have more in common than things that we don't have in common. We have more of a reason to stick together than we do to push ourselves apart. And and that's why I always talk about the three types over here, the instinct type, the thinking type, the heart type. That's why I try to go into detail with different things to let you all know that even if you're listening to me right now and you're a dude, you're like, man, Jay, I'm telling you, man, ain't no good women, man. You know, all these women is garbage. Or you're a woman and you're like, I just can't find them and blah, 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 and all this other kind of stuff. What you've heard me say over and over again, if you as a person, you know, and I always use Zodiac because a lot of people are just, you know, familiar with Zodiac. And if you as a person can say, I'm the most attracted to Aquarius, and I almost always end up with an Aquarius or a Gemini or a Libra, whoever it is for you, what that is telling you right there is that your energy is lining up with only a very small window of people. That maybe 1 out of 2 of the zodiacs you're lining up with, yet you know that there are 12 of them out there. And unless you have dated every single one of them and has actually gone through the process of, you know, as a woman, dating a short man, dating a tall man, dating a man, like I said, each one of these zodiacs, dating a man that's rich, dating a man that's poor, or a man, each one of these zodiacs, dating a woman that's rich, dating a woman that's poor, all these different combinations. Unless you've done that, it's hard to make the argument against what I'm saying, which is you might just have to change your person, the type of person that you're attracted to. All right? Because when we're talking about attraction here, we're talking about energy. We're not talking about, you know, the physical, because there's physical people that's pretty, that are Geminis, that are Libras, that are Scorpios, whatever. So on my channel, it's all about relationship. And even what she's talking about, like I said, I agree. But it's like, can we get it where our relationships, where we come together? And at that point, it becomes easier because now when you're watching the children, you have 2 sets of eyes. When you're trying to do things financially, you have more money coming in. It's easier when both people are working together.
Respectability politics. You're policing Black Americans. If that's what it is, so be it. So be it. It needs to be said. And in order for us to attempt to escape accountability or responsibility on our own part, we claim that the conditions that we see in Black communities is being caused by somebody else. It's not our own fault. It's white people and it's structural racism or something or another. It's everybody else's fault except for our own. Give me a break. It's pitiful. It's pitiful that we refuse to take accountability for the things that we see going on in our communities. And sure, we can acknowledge that structural racism and the history of slavery in this country and discrimination and Jim Crow and Black codes and all of that has played a part in the conditions and some of the conditions that we see in Black communities. But we also have to be responsible for the ways in which Black Americans create their own conditions and contribute to the degenerative effects that we see going on in our communities. Black Americans who don't want to hear that immediately run to innocence. They rush to innocence. They claim that it's respectability politics to call out these issues in our community. They claim that it's policing Black bodies to call out the low morality and the moral decay in our community. Call it whatever you want. You're not going to get me to shut up about it. I'm Black. This is my culture too. I have a right to talk about and critique what is happening in my culture and have something to say about it. That's all.
I'm actually glad that this particular video has done well and has kind of gone viral. And like I say, a lot of other influencers have talked about it because I think that this is really important. You know, like I say, if you actually care about the uplift of the community. Now, if you don't care about the uplift of the community, that's fine. Like I said, I mean, she kept it straight a little bit more on the political side. You know, because I could easily go into more of a Christian side, but, you know, I know a lot of people, you know, especially from her perspective, she might not necessarily align with that. But when it all breaks down to it, Black people, like I said, we are going in the wrong direction as a culture. You know, we're going in the wrong direction. Sure, there's a lot of really great Black people that have, you know, popped up. And I know some of you have watched some of my videos that I've already talked about this. And one of my things, my frustrations is that a lot of the powerful Black people right now in our culture do not care. They don't. They're making money off of other black people's destruction. They are. There's a lot of politicians in power that are absolutely doing nothing. There are people that could actually be working on different narratives, and they're not doing it. Okay, since we got a few minutes, since you guys have hung around, let's get deep for a second. Many of you know my background is media. All right, that is literally my background. That's why I talk about it so much, and I actually have knowledge in it. Now, it only costs, like in today's market, it only costs about $3 million to make a film. $3 million. And actually you can make it for much cheaper than that, but that's at the Hollywood level. So you're making it with SAG, what they call SAG actors, Screen Actors Guild actors, and everybody pretty much, in the particular project is union. You could do it around 3.5 million, depending upon where you're at. It might actually, cost you a little bit more, but it's not in the 50s and 60s and 70 millions, which is what you hear all the time. There are a lot of black people in power that understand how media works and how it affects the conscious mind. All right. And these black people could come up and come together and say, we are going to put out certain movies and certain TV shows, and we don't care if these things make money. We're only going to do this from the perspective that we're going to try to help the community. And you might say, Jay, man, but they all about money, man. How can you say that, because then they wouldn't be making their money. Well, yes and no. Almost everything that has black people in it. Somebody was, we used to do this all the time when I was younger. We would talk about the average black film. And the average black film about 15 years ago would actually make around $20 million or more. So the movie is going to generally make between 20 and 50 million. Now, from a perspective of Hollywood, that was a low number. But the reason why Tyler Perry blew up, and see, I knew this back then, but I didn't have, $5 million. But all that needed to happen was the movie needed to be made for under 10 million. If it was made for under 10 million, by the time you put the advertisement and everything together, the movie would be profitable. It would always be profitable because most movies, as long as they make twice as much money as how much they cost, they're considered profitable. All right. So I'm teaching you a little bit about how movies are made. Right. So all you have to do is you take the average black film and then you say, okay, what is the average amount that it makes at the box office? And the average amount at that time was around $20 million. If it made more than that, awesome. But there was very few that made less than that. If you go back and you study Tyler Perry, what Tyler Perry did was he invested in his own movies. Most of his movies he made for under $10 million. And a lot of black actors that were working with him at the time complained because they were saying, we're not making enough money. Tyler is not giving us enough money. But what Tyler understood was that black people could not command that kind of money because they did not bring in the box office numbers. Because of this, almost every single one of Tyler Perry's films were a success. And as he did more and more movies, he actually created a Tyler Perry universe where characters like Medea would actually pop up in several films, not just in one. So what he was doing was creating a universe very much like the Marvel universe. All right? And people enjoy seeing the same characters over and over and over again. So this is nothing but accounting. All right? That's all it is. It's accounting. This is how you make money. So a movie that is made for $4 million, 9 times out of 10, it's going to make its money. It's going to make its money. It's actually one of the things that I want to do in the future because I want to see a lot of sweet romances. Okay. And I think that would help a lot of black women understand that the average guy is a good guy and they don't always have to chase the thug. Because what you see does have an effect on you. It's like I'm always telling you, it's actually speaking to your subconscious mind. So a lot of our problems could be solved by all these black people in Hollywood and or in politics and or they just have money, but they're choosing not to. And they might make the choice because maybe they don't know. But I believe a lot of them do know. And I believe that they're just, they've kind of bought in on the concept that they can make more money with the black people being in turmoil than they can if the black culture actually lines itself up and is actually going in, a direction that will bless it 50 years from now. Anywho, that's my take on it. I thank you guys for watching. I definitely appreciate this particular lady, and I'm glad that her words are now out there for so many people to listen to. So remember, there's a lot of information in my description if you want to learn a little bit more about marriage and different things like that. And depending upon when you're watching this video, I may or may not have a book out because I am working on some books at this time. All right, so please like. If you are into marriage, you want to be married, please subscribe, and I will see you all in the very next video.